to Science Talk. I am your host and resident oceanographer, Jim Massa.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Environmental Coffee House. I am Sandy Schoelles, and welcome, Jim Massa. It is wonderful to be back with my buddy. The team is together, and we made it. Shitty weather and all. So, what's going on, Jim? How's everything going up there?
Well, hello, Sandy. Hello, everyone. Very snowy day here.
Yeah.
So my internet is kind of, so
wonky.
we could lose my signal here.
Well, we could start out here. We're going to start out with something for Jim. There, that's his internet. We started out, or I could give it a. There we go. All right, we'll flush Jim's bad internet problems away, and we will start the show. We've got a good show for you guys. We really do. We have a lot to talk about. And I always say hi to everybody. And I'm just going to do a quick hi, Kim. Thank you for moderating. And everybody that's here. Scott's here. And Obsolete Optics. Thank you for being here. But we've really got to get started. So, Jim, the first thing we're going to do is play Sir David Rice to start. And then Jim and I are going to talk, and then we have another video, but then we have article, and we have a publication, and boy, we're going to get down into it. It's refreezing the Arctic, and we're talking about a lot of heavy stuff, all right? So I'm going to play, hang on, guys. I'm going to play this video for you. I really want you to listen close.
Climate change in the Arctic Circle region is a grave threat to the manageable future of all of humanity. The sea ice covering the Arctic Sea has been melting more and more rapidly over the last 30 years due to climate change and global warming. The challenge is such that what we do over the next 10 years is probably going to determine the future of humanity for the next few thousand years. Unless we act quickly, by mid-century, all of our coastal cities would be unmanageable. For example, 90% of the landmass of Vietnam will be under seawater at least once a year, less than 30 years from now. Where do the people go who are subject to being underwater? What level of migration does that lead to? The consequences are severe. Here is the Russell Glacier melting rapidly, causing that great river of water to flow into the ocean. It's black, it's darkened, and that is due to the arrival of soot from fires in the west, from burning forests, etc. And then the ice melts much more rapidly. When all of the ice is melted, global sea levels will have risen by 7 meters, or 23 feet. But we must anticipate severe impact on our coastal cities within a few decades. There's another big threat that we have. The permafrost melting in the land surrounding the Arctic Sea causes rapid explosive release of methane. If it was all released over a 20-year period, global temperatures might rise by 5 to 8 degrees centigrade. Now clearly, these sea level rises and temperature rises and changes in global weather systems must be avoided. We need to actually return to an understanding of the importance of our ecological systems to our future. We are part of that ecology, and that's very clear because at the moment, we human beings, all of us together, are destroying the ecosystems that we depend on. The Centre for Climate Repair at Cambridge is working with global partners on the actions urgently needed to create a manageable future for humanity. This involves 3 R's. We need to reduce emissions deeply and rapidly. We need to remove excess greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. But perhaps the most pressing, we need to refreeze the Arctic. To buy time to enable us to manage those 2 first R's. Now, how could we refreeze the Arctic? The most promising method, in our view, is to cool the Arctic Circle region during the polar summer by a method involving white cloud cover over the Arctic Circle during the 3 polar summer months. This would reflect sunlight away from the ice layer formed over the Arctic Sea during the polar winter, with year-on-year growth of the last ice layer. A marine engineer, Stephen Salter, has designed a marine vessel which could create white clouds. This imitates the natural process that occurs when waves break over the ocean, creating tiny droplets of seawater which can be carried upwards by warm wind. As they travel up, each droplet loses water as vapor, leaving a salt crystal so small it is invisible, less than a micron in diameter. A cloud of these salt crystals then hovers in the upper atmosphere, and each crystal again attracts water vapor to recreate a tiny droplet. The accumulation of tiny droplets forms a white, bright cloud. However, we also need to produce the tiny droplets of water at scale. A vast number of tiny droplets of water need to be generated, and without using energy input that would be just as damaging as the normal processes of global warming. This is a very clever design in which the energy is picked up from the motion of the water currents and from the wind. And so potentially all of the energy needed can be obtained from these renewable sources. We would need 500 to 1,000 vessels around the Arctic operated remotely in the 3 polar summer months. We're faced with this enormous challenge that we've all created for ourselves. Somehow, I feel what could emerge is a better understanding between nations as we all deal with a common threat. What we're trying to do is return the Earth to a livable planet.
Okay, well, we're going to wait for Jim to come back, but I'm going to show you something about who this dude is. And I'm going to pull it up. He works with Rockstrom, all right? And he is in the, let me get it. Where is he? Uh-oh. Oh, here they are. Climate breakdown is real. It's happening. It's the CCAG Climate Crisis Advisory Group. And I'll show you. I just hope Jim, he's waiting. He's just waiting. His internet's slow. So it's going to be one of those nights, guys, and we'll deal with it, right? We'll deal with it. So this is the group he's with. Climate change is the greatest challenge humanity has ever faced, obviously, and reduce, remove, repair, resilience. And who's in that group? Let's find out. Who is in? Who are we? And it is David King, Alice Hill. All right, but who I really want to get down to is there's quite a bit. Rockstrom. Rockstrom is definitely the mainstream guy right now in climate science. A lot of it, IPCC, Climate Sciences. He's the director of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, professor at the Institute of Earth and Environmental Science at Potsdam. So you can see where they're coming from. Where they're coming from is a place of doing these kinds of things. Now, I think that what he was talking about is obviously a geoengineering type of thing, but it's different. And it's certainly not like MERS, MERS, which is Jim and I have decided that we're going to have to do a follow-up show to this one, obviously. But, he talked about reducing, and of course we all know these things. We all know all of this. And oh, Jim is still waiting, but he will be back. He will be back. It's gonna come. It's gonna come. This is live internet, and I honestly cannot do the show all by myself. But these guys now, they include leading authorities in climate science, carbon emissions, energy, environment, natural resources. Some of the members also participate in governmental advisory groups. So it's big time IPCC people. And what's in the news while we wait for Jim? They have climate interventions. They have a report about the interventions. And these are some of the things that we were going to possibly talk about. Well, they want to try these projects. Obviously, right now it doesn't seem like it's the flying projects. I I had a I definitely had a picture, but I don't know what happened to it, of the the uh the stratospheric, climate engineering. But oh, I hope he's going to be able to make it, because we'll have to reschedule, and that's been my whole week. I was ill. I couldn't sit. I finally started feeling better, and I really don't. I'm really sorry that this is happening, and I'm sure he is too. He's waiting. Let me see, what did he say? New messages. Internet is sporadic. Well, we're just going to hope for the best. If not, I cannot pull the show off, and we'll talk about something different. That's all. What can I say? And believe me, I was ready to do a rant the other night, but you guys are not here. You guys are not here to hear me. You're here for Jim, and we have things ready. We're going to talk about an article. I suppose I could actually read the article that spurred the whole topic for us. So maybe I will do that while we are waiting. And it's actually not a bad one. It's just a little one, but it's from Azo Clean Tech. And I'm going to pull it up and I'm going to read it. All right. So here we go. While we are waiting, and thank you guys for your patience. Hang on with me. Don't leave, okay? Really, don't leave, because I do think he's going to make it back. Could we refreeze the Arctic? A major consequence of the ongoing climate change is the swift reduction in the extent of Arctic sea ice cover witnessed over the past few decades. The melting ice and disintegration of glaciers in regions with elevated latitudes have the potential to accelerate the increase in sea levels rapidly. However, scientists from the United States of America have developed an efficient and cost effective method that could lead to refreezing the Arctic. An overview of Arctic ice sea variations. The sea ice is pivotal in the Arctic climate system and its implications. It is existential in various significant climate feedback phenomena, including energy exchanges at the oceans and atmosphere's interface, and engaging with atmospheric and ocean circulation patterns. The sea ice holds immense significance for Arctic's biodiversity and economic social advancement. Notably, the diminishing Arctic sea ice fosters the exploration of resources and the utilization of marine transportation routes, which, we're so fond of, right? Researchers have thoroughly assessed the Arctic sea ice regional variations in the latest article published in Atmosphere. Since the inception of the satellite observation era in 1979, there has been an observable decline in the total September Arctic sea ice area, which is called the SIA, the sea ice area. On average, this decline amounts to approximately 11% per decade. Notably, while the decline in sea ice area during the summer months is over 3 times more rapid in relative percentage terms compared to the 3% declining during the winter, the contrast in absolute trend values is not as pronounced due to the larger sea ice area during the winter. Specifically, the absolute trend in summer sea ice is only twice as swift as that observed during winter. So the effects of ice melting in the Arctic, the implications of sea ice loss exhibit regional variations influenced by diverse driving factors and mechanisms operating in distinct geographical areas. And he's still waiting, it looks like. Live. I was in the areas. So the timing of sea ice formation and disappearance. The contraction of multi-year ice expanse. These alterations in the sea ice impact atmospheric circulation, although this response is contingent upon the specific region and extent of the sea ice loss. Conversely, atmospheric circulation reciprocally influences sea ice fluctuations across interannual and decadal timeframes. The accelerated melting of sea ice in the early 21st century can be attributed to the mounting influence of anthropogenic greenhouse forcing. This phenomena might signify a shift toward a novel, dynamic state characterized by a heightened heat transportation from the ocean and atmosphere into the Arctic. Such a transition could potentially activate positive feedback mechanisms within the Arctic climate system, suggesting the likelihood of a tipping point scenario. So, what is sea ice modeling? As per an article published in the bulletin of the American Meteorological Society, Earth Systems Models, the ESMs, encompass a component dedicated to sea ice, accurately portraying alterations in sea ice and their implementations on our ocean circulation. The prevailing sea ice models commonly depict the sea ice pack as a continuous substance, a notion pioneered by the Arctic Ice Dynamics Joint Experiment Consortium in the 70s. Initially conceived for climate investigations, the sea ice constituents integrated within the ESMs are now harnessed across diverse resolutions, extending to very high resolutions exceeding their initial design specifications by over 100-fold. These models are being employed in an increasingly extensive array of applications. So, by incorporating adjustments to account for grounded ridges and tensile strength, continuum models have been extended to replicate the arrangement of Arctic land fast ice accurately. This type of ice comprises stationary sea ice patches affixed to coastal areas or seabed. So, the strategy for refreezing the Arctic ice. The Arctic region is confronted with a grave danger due to climate change, experiencing a rapid increase in temperature, approximately twice that of the global average. It's anticipated by the middle of the century, if not sooner, the Arctic will witness the near complete disappearance of sea ice, which could yield potentially catastrophic climate repercussions for the Arctic and the entire planet. And if Jim doesn't show up for some reason, we're going to talk about that. The latest article published in Environmental Research Communications has presented a strategy for Arctic ice refreezing using stratospheric aerosol injection. Stratospheric aerosol injection is a potential climate intervention strategy to mitigate global warming by modestly, they say, enhancing the Earth's upper atmosphere's reflectivity. Subpolar geoengineering would include localized implementations at approximately 60 degrees north-south latitudes compared to global solar geoengineering. Due to the lower tropopause attitude at these higher latitudes, the elevation requirement for aerosols or their precursors would be less, alleviating engineering complexities compared to worldwide deployment. High altitude aircraft are proposed to disperse aerosol particles into the atmosphere. When released at the elevation of 43,000 feet, approximately 13,000 meters, above the altitudes at which commercial airlines cruise, these aerosols would gradually drift towards the poles, resulting in a mild reduction of sunlight reaching the surface. So, concurrently, operational military to air refueling tankers, such as the older KC 135 and the AAMMRT, they lack the payload capacity required at specific altitudes. Now, remember, guys, this is not happening yet. A fleet comprising of 125 of these advanced tankers could effectively deliver a payload necessary for cooling the designated regions. The expenses associated with this approach would be notably minimal compared to other climate-related strategies such as mitigation, adaptation, or carbon capture and sequestration. It is improbable that a subpolar implementation would evade any of the SAI initiative's governance complexities. This aspect could emerge as a pivotal subject for future social science investigation. Nonetheless, considering its apparent feasibility and economic of nature, this scenario warrants more profound consideration. Now, the future of sea ice. In the face of imminent threat of losing summer sea ice in the Arctic, the SAI strategy represents a compelling avenue for further exploration and research. All right, hang on. Hang on, guys. I just have to answer Jim. Yes, Jim. I have a feeling he's going to tell me the show's going to shit the bed. But that's okay, because then I'm going to take over and we're going to talk about other things. As we continue to grapple with challenges proposed by climate change, innovative approaches like this may hold the key to preserving the Arctic environment and mitigating its cascading effects on our planet. It is a reminder that even in the face of challenges, human ingenuity and collaboration can offer solutions that could reshape our planet's future. So here's the references. And for now, what I'm going to do is, because I really don't know what's happening with our buddy, and I feel really terrible that this shit's happening, and most of you are probably, as disappointed as I am. But again, the show must go on. So let me play around with my screen. And I'm glad you're hanging in there, because I do have other things to talk about besides just what we were going to do, and we'll just have to do our show over. So if you don't mind me moving things around, I'll go back to me. I do have another video, but we were going to talk about it. But I'll go back to me, play with this. He's waiting for me to let me in. Okay, Jim. I don't see you. I don't see you. Well, he says he's there. I don't see you. And by the way, with our software, it should automatically let him back in. Like when he comes in through the green room, he's already set. So he should have showed up. So he's going to have to try to connect again. Anyway, so I'm going to leave him up for now. And I'm going to see if I can find the graphic that had that I had for this. Hang on a second. I did have a graphic, and I'm going to take it out, and I'm going to pull it over. I'm going to see if it comes up. Okay, so look at that graphic. Right now, this is what we are experiencing in the United States. We are experiencing the Arctic air down in the mid latitudes, and the Arctic is warmer. So in fact, Anchorage, okay, and I'm going to look it up. Anchorage was yeah, it's, what did he say? It was 2 degrees there in Fairbanks. But Anchorage, let's see, Anchorage today, I'm 12 degrees Fahrenheit. Or if you want to, I mean, I could check 11 degrees it went down to. But let's look up where he is. We'll look up Fairbanks right now. Fahrenheit will be idiots. He's 5 degrees, but flurries. It's not really crazy there. It's really not that big of a difference. So I don't know why he has the internet troubles. But see, that's what's happening here. And so I have been watching all the storm chasers in Buffalo from the warmth of my own home. I watch them drive up and down the roads that I drove for over 20 years to go to work. They're on Route 5. It's been pretty interesting. But this is what's happening. And it's quite something. So that was one of the graphs that I had. And then I'm pulling them over because I didn't load them all up. So I don't know. He retried the link and he said it didn't work. All right. I'm going to give him another link because obviously shit's not working. So let's reset the link and give him another one and hope for the best. Oh, he's back. He's back. All right. All right. You're back. All right, Jim. Jim is back! Yay! Wait. Where is my applause? Well, Jim, I did everything I could. Yay! He's back! Yes. Okay, so Jim's back.
Can everyone hear me?
Well, we hear you now.
Well, I mean, everyone watching, can they hear me?
Can we hear him? Can we hear him? Yes, let's see.
Okay,
guys,
cool.
Can we hear Jim? Yes. I want to be in live mode and not screw anything up. I just
not only the internet take a dump, but my power went out briefly as well. So
oh, that's always lovely. I just went through all that shit, so I get it. Tuesday, and it made me go on a frantic hunt for backup batteries because I lost all my work that I was working on the day that my back was just killing me. So I read that first article. Just the article.
The one with the AZO clean tech, that one there?
Yeah. And we need to go here. Okay, so we're now going to go here, and what we're going to do is bring up. I think, Jim, you look fine. I wonder, does Jim need to get a little bit brighter? Maybe I make him a little bit brighter. Let's make you just a little bit brighter, Jim. Okay, there you go. All right, guys. So what we're going to do now that Jim is back is we're going to pull up the articles that we had for Jim to talk about because it's not quite. Oh, Jesus Christ. Everything just moved over. All right. So we did this article, Jim. All right. The AZO Clean Tech. So I read that
Right.
to everybody with the techno. And I also went over what the CCAG group was, Rockstrom's group, but from the beginning when we had I played the video with Sir, what's his name, Rice, who are we? The main dude who is Sir David King, not Rice. Sir David King. So we went over who that is in that group, and of course Johann Rockstrom, who is like, the voice out there that seems to be heard a lot, right? So that's what we did. So now we have a paper, we have two papers, and we are actually going to look at this paper. The regional features of Arctic sea ice changes in 2000 to 2019 versus 1979 to 1999 protocols. And I had read the abstract, but I didn't read it to everybody. But it's up to you, Jim. This is where you take over.
Well, I'm not going to go over the entire paper because it's a lengthy paper, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if folks are interested I can over on my channel do a deep dive on this paper
All right.
if they would like. Even though it was published back in 2022, so of course there's been more new information in the interim. Um, but if you read the abstract already, then what I'll do is I'll skip down to Figure 1. Uh, we can at least look at Figure 1.
All
And
right,
then,
let's get down to figure one. Yeah, it was interesting. I also have it in a bigger picture, so maybe I will. No, that's figure two, of course. All
I'll be
right,
next.
there's figure one. There's figure one, and it's big, so you can see it. Okay, figure one.
So Figure 1 is showing the SIA time series from 79 to 2019. So basically, like a 31 year time frame.
Mm-hmm.
And the showing for March, which is indicated in blue, and September, which is indicated in red, and then they fit a regression curve through the data there. And over in the circular inset, there's various regions there. For example, the seven in the green near the top is the Bering,
Mm-hmm.
and if you look around, you got the Baffin, northwestern passages, and so on. So the keys are there, but it's basically covering this region, and they're looking at what's going on uh, with the sea ice area.
Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind, March is the oceanic winter for the northern hemisphere. So we would expect to see higher sea ice extent amounts in March versus September, which is the oceanic summer for the northern hemisphere. And the units are 10 to the 6 square kilometers. So it's basically how many million square kilometers the ice extent is.
Okay.
And as you can see, for both wintertime in March, summertime in September, there is a significant decline in the sea ice extent. And and this has taken it to about 2020. It is even less at the end of 2023.
Right.
And the trend will continue to get worse from here on out. So that's what Figure 1 shows. Figure 2, which is just right below it, is basically showing the similar trend, but by the different uh, areas
Yeah,
of the Arctic Ocean
this
basin.
is cool.
So they're showing monthly sea ice coverage as a percent of the region under consideration in three periods. So they have the overall 79 to 2019 is the black curve. Okay. Then they have 79 to 1999 is the blue curve. And then 2000 to 2019 is the red curve.
Okay.
And then they put the differences in the gray bars that you see, protruding downward. And we can start at the top there in the Barents Sea. By the time, again, keep in mind September is the oceanic summer, so we expect to have minimal ice then, and March will be oceanic winter, so we expect to have maximum ice then. When you enter the Barents Sea, it's basically at zero by the time we get to September.
Mm.
And the
Oh.
Barents Sea was like one of the first regions in the Arctic Ocean to get Atlantified, and we're seeing
Ooh,
this here.
Atlantified. Mm.
And so, I mean, it's practically, you know, bottomed out. If you look at the Kara Sea, which is right next to the Barents Sea, it also dramatically is reduced, though not quite to zero, but it's getting down there. And the point is, though, when you look at the recent years, the red lines, it's below the blue and the black lines.
Wow.
So we're losing the
Mm.
ice. Then we
Yeah.
move next door from the Kara to the Laptev Sea, and we see the same trend. And the low level ice is about the same in both the Kara and the Laptev Sea when we get to September. Perhaps a tad
What?
more in the Laptev Sea, but
Oops.
y- the ice is going away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you
And
see it.
once again, the same situation for the East Siberian seas. So what we're seeing here is on the Eurasian side, going from the Barents through the East Siberian seas, is the effect of the warm North Atlantic intermediate water flowing in to the Arctic Ocean. And it's basically melting the ice from below. So that the time when the ice freezes is later in the year, to when it melts is earlier in the year, given an extension of low sea ice time periods, allowing for the heat to diffuse upward to melt it from below, but also with the reduced ice cover,
Mm.
you have reduced albedo. So we have increased warming from solar radiation inputs, and that can melt the ice from above. Now, what's really interesting is when you get over to the Chukchi Sea, in recent years,
Phew.
the Chukchi Sea is not forming ice in September. It's at
Boom.
it's at it's at zero, and that is due. And we'll see the same thing with the Bering Sea. We'll get to that in a moment. But that is due to the warm waters flowing in from the Pacific Ocean
Ah.
into the Arctic Ocean. So we got warm water flowing in through Fram,
Mm-hmm.
in the Atlantic side,
Mm-hmm.
warm water flowing in through the Bering, and then the whole Arctic Ocean is warming up. Now, the Akha Sea, which is off Japan, that's really much further south as far as latitude goes. So seeing the ice disappear, like in June, you know, through November, is really not a surprise.
Right.
That's almost expected. So I wonder if that was included almost as like a control or something. But anyway, um, then we look at the Bering Sea and we see similar things. We see that by the time you get to June into the beginning of November, there's no sea ice. It used to be sea ice used to extend out of the Chukchis through the strait into the Bering
Okay.
Sea. It used to be that way. And as you would see from the blue and black line
Mm-hmm.
early on, like around March.
Okay.
But basically, the Bering Sea is pretty much not forming ice much. And the Baffin Sea, over on the Canadian archipelago side of things, is, come September, no ice. Just this general decline of sea ice. And when you have
Ah.
no ice in September, that's allowing heat absorption, which will then impede ice formation when you would expect it to be. And we see similar patterns. I look at the Labrador Sea. It pretty much, the Labrador Sea, where the Labrador Current, the coldest current, one of the coldest currents on the planet. Where's the ice?
Where is it? It's like it's mush. It's ice mush.
The Greenland Sea is, again, we see a decline
Hmm.
that in recent years it's less than historical years. The Greenland Sea, of course, is part of the Greenland Icelandic Norwegian Sea, which is the terminus for the North Atlantic Drift, which is a
Hmm.
branch off of the Gulf Stream, which is where AMOC forms. So um, we in all of these graphs, the red lines are below the blue and the black lines, indicating less ice. All of them, every single one of them.
Right. That's definitely. I was reinforcing my own reading, Jim, today and my yesterday and today, and understanding the severity of what's happening. Really,
It's amazing.
the
One way of putting it.
oscillation, the all the different, the oscillation in the jet stream that's being pushed down, to the mid latitudes even more. It's all very serious. Look at the Hudson Bay. But now look
Yeah.
at the Arctic Ocean on the bottom. Let's talk about
Well,
that one.
south of 80 North and then north of
Yeah.
80 North.
Okay.
Which one? I'll do the
The
south
south of
first.
80. Yeah. Let's look at the south of 80. And because they, now, one thing's different than the other. So let's talk about those.
Well, it's basically disappearing. Look how low. There's a dramatic dip
Okay.
in when you get to September.
Mm-hmm.
This is leading almost. Of course, you still have, from 80 to the pole, which is, a very small region there.
Right.
And it's still, and even there, in that far northern reach, the recent years still has the least amount of sea ice extent.
Wow. Extent,
This is leading, this is
area.
what's leading to, if you look at the total area,
Mm-hmm.
you know, on, say under 1 million square kilometers, that technically to some folks there, that is the definition of a blue ocean event.
Well, from what I read today, 2030s is the time. I mean, if there's people that say a lot of different things, Jim, but 2030s was a consensus of a lot of scientists. What I was reading, which I did not pull up, unfortunately, and that's just going to make weather whiplash as it comes because it's gradual. What goes on in the Arctic doesn't stay in the Arctic, as we all well know.
Well, part of the reason for the jet stream kind of going nutsy and dipping and doodling and all sorts of things
Mm-hmm.
is that the temperature and pressure gradient has become
Right.
less defined. So it used to be you had a sharp temperature gradient, so you constrain the pull of a vortex, the jet stream to high latitudes,
Mm-hmm.
and it just minds its own business up there. And but now with the Arctic dipole basically established, and the temperature and pressure gradients basically being much less defined,
Mm-hmm.
this is just going to allow for the jet stream to meander all over the place.
Right.
And this is what's happening. So it's meandering. It's not as fast as it would historically was. And so this is when you get slow moving systems
Yep.
and it just dumps precipitation. And you sit there with a precipitation bomb.
Here's another one that I didn't know which one this was the. I don't know if you wanted to go over the trends contributions to in the in let's take a look at it. Okay.
Yeah, these charts, because I have a slight dyslexia issue, these charts kind of
Oh, they're kind of
do
difficult.
yeah, they do the funky things to my eyeballs. You
Okay.
know?
Okay. Well, then I
I mean,
will,
I know this is a common tool,
uh-huh.
and it's a handy tool to present data, but my eyeballs kind of do like all sorts of crazy shit.
All right. That's fine. It was different months, and it was the contribution of trends in the individual Arctic regions to a total northern hemisphere sea ice area trend at the bottom. So, there's a lot of stuff in this article, and we could go down. For example, here's another one. This is areas of noticeable SIC trends, more than 10% per decade. I don't know if I can even get it bigger. Oh, yeah, I can get this one bigger. And you see the differences in the different years. Wow.
Yeah, look at that. Yeah. And don't forget, not only is it, the extent, it's also the ice thickness and ice volume,
Of
the loss of
course.
the multi-year ice.
Hmm.
That is far more concerning because the thinner ice that you have, the easier it is to get rid of it.
Yeah, and it's going. And that's why these people are getting desperate about these different kinds of engineering things they're talking about. Well, I'm just going to read the bottom. The accelerated sea ice melt in the beginning of the 21st century can be related to increasing anthropogenic greenhouse forcing and also may reflect a transition to a new dynamic state with increasing ocean and atmosphere heat transport to the Arctic, with triggering positive feedbacks in the Arctic climate system. And
Yep,
so it's a tipping point.
it is.
It's a tipping point, and we're a lot of tipping points. We're really in a lot of tipping points. And there
And it's also
was,
the interactions between the tipping elements themselves.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes the interactions can maybe offer a slight mitigation. Other times it enhances, further increases the effects, the ramification. So the interactions among the various tipping elements also needs to be considered.
mm-hmm. I'm looking for your questions, guys. The cues. I know I saw a couple in there, but I can't seem to find them at the moment. So we're just going to move on, and then I'll find them towards the end of the show. I wanted to move on, Jim, just a little bit to the article that I read at first, which was, the premise of our show, which was about this stratospheric aerosol injection. And what's up here? And do you want me to read the abstract?
Sure, if you want,
It would
if
help. All right. Do you want to read it?
oh, whatever, you know. Okay, I just pulled it up here on another tab, so I
All right,
can
hon.
go
Read it.
ahead.
You read it.
Stratospheric aerosol injection (SAI) is a prospective climate intervention technology that would seek to abate climate change by deflecting back into space a small fraction of the incoming solar radiation. While most consideration given to SAI assumes a global intervention, this paper considers an alternative scenario
Mm-hmm.
whereby SAI might be deployed only in the subpolar regions. Subpolar deployment would quickly envelope the poles as well and could arrest or reverse ice and permafrost melt at high latitudes. Permafrost,
Could.
permafrost thaw. Thaw
Yes,
is a better
could.
word. This would yield global benefit by retarding sea level rise, given that effective SAI deployment could be achieved at much lower altitudes in these regions. There's my dyslexia kicking in.
It's
Then it would be
okay.
then it would be required in the tropics. It is commonly assumed that subpolar deployment would present fewer aeronautical challenges. An SAI deployment intended to reduce average surface temperatures in both the Arctic and Antarctic regions by 2C is deemed here to be feasible at relatively low cost with conventional technologies. However, We do not find that such a deployment could be undertaken with a small fleet of pre-existing aircraft, nor that relegating such a program to these sparsely populated regions would obviate the myriad governance challenges that would confront any such deployment. Nevertheless, given its feasibility and potential global benefit, the prospect of subpolar focus SAI warrants greater attention.
Absolutely, but it warrants maybe not doing it. But you and I, we've talked about this. I mean, look at the words, the abbreviations: sulfuric acid,
Yeah.
stratospheric aerosol injection, stratospheric aerosol injection, lofter, sulfur dioxide. I mean, these are things that they've been studying at Harvard through David Keith's program forever. They are not being implemented now. Most scientists do not want them implemented, but this group that we were looking at is really, they're, by their numbers, they're desperate by what they see. But are we desperate enough to do this kind of stuff, Jim?
Are we desperate?
Are we
I don't
desperate?
know.
I mean, I don't know too many
I
people
don't.
who want to do this.
Well, the, there are, for those of us who follow this and know the how dire the circumstances are.
Mm-hmm.
We almost have taken a point. Well, at this point, it's kind of too late. So,
The
what's the
dub
point?
Oh, the WTF moment? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the the great majority of people still have not really clued into how dire the situation is. So to them, this is six one half dozen or the other.
Oh,
You
my God.
know? It's just a lot of apathy running around. And then when you have all the conflicts taking place around the planet, I hate to say it, but climate change has taken a major back seat.
Well, sure it has, because we are a warring bunch of mothers. I mean, we'd rather spend all the money on sending bombs than trying to look at things that aren't, well, not this particular thing, but like Mears Project, which I know we were going to talk about in a different show. We didn't bring Mears in, which just seems to be more benign than all of this. And most of the scientists that are looking at this are frightened because they say, okay, here, let's make this trimetric sail for plane here, right? And but it's going to be generational. They're talking about multi generational. This will never stop. And you don't know what the material that's inside this will do when it drops out of the air. What's it going to do to farmland? I don't care how much they want to.
That's a really excellent point. First of all, off the top of just general statements here, as you know, and most of the people who watch my channel know, I am extremely skeptical, and I'm being polite when it comes to geoengineering schemes. I'm just very skeptical of that because there are always unanticipated parameters, unanticipated interactions,
Absolutely.
unintended consequences that result from doing whatever. Whether you're throwing, injecting iron into the ocean, whether you are injecting aerosol or aluminum into the atmosphere, there are always unintended consequences. You will note, all right, they put in that list of, abbreviations there, sulfuric acid. Well, they're going to inject, sulfur dioxide.
Yeah.
Sulfur dioxide oxidizes in forming with water to form sulfuric acid.
Mm-hmm.
When it gets big enough, heavy enough mass, it's going to fall to the ground. It's going to come down as precipitation. Remember acid rain in the early 1980s?
Yes.
That was sulfuric acid and nitric acid
So
coming
it's
out,
bringing it back.
from the smelters. So you're going to reduce the pH if it hits the water, you're going to reduce the pH of the water, killing the organisms there,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's marine or fresh water. If it hits the terrestrial system, you're going to screw up the pH there.
Yeah.
So and that's going to have adverse effect on plants. And with the aluminum, okay, aluminum also falls out of the sky, and what happens is when it gets into the soil, it forms a chelation, and the chelates interfere with the roots of the plant, so then the roots cannot absorb or uptake nutrients and water and that kind of stuff. Result, you kill off a bunch of plants.
Right.
So you anytime you are doing these injections, you're just asking for trouble.
Right.
What are going to be the atmospheric circulation pattern? How is this going to change atmospheric circulation patterns? And also, you have to continually inject this stuff.
Yes. And this group, particularly, is advocating for an evidence based, balanced approach to the interventions, particularly carbon dioxide removal, climate repair, biomimicry techniques that require further investigation before deployment. So we're not even there. That's basically, they say it's carbon dioxide removal, that's carbon capture. And as the world moves past its 1.5C threshold and the effects of the climate crisis continue to heighten, the focus on climate interventions will only sharpen. But it's what kind, you know? It's what kind. David thinks that this other little thing that we showed in the beginning, the well, is it marine cloud brightening? I think that's another name for it, marine cloud brightening. They want to put thousands of these little machines that have to be built, probably using fossil fuels, to spray up the droplets. So here, let's click this and see. This is climate interventions report. So everything's going to be linked in here, but it's all interesting to see. And you guys have to understand that this group, then they have money behind them. This is Rockstrom's group. And even, I mean, I know even James Hansen, he's advocating for nuclear power, I think, if he still is. But we will still be looking at all of this, but this particular uh, uh, report will be in there. See, they're identifying the need, why we have to do what we have to do, and I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but that is their urgent scientific intervention, and that's the new report for that. Now, this is the overshoot, they call it. Want to take a look at that?
Sure.
Yeah. Unprecedented interventions to mitigate this. Mitigate it. Okay. And I'll read the key findings and then you comment, Jim. So, key findings from this report are above the critical 1.5C threshold. The latest science warns that the world will enter a realm of unacceptable risk and uncertainty, exposing humanity to potentially irreversible harms. Excuse me. All right. Even at the current 1.1, now that's what they said at 1.1 decade average global temperature rise, many parts of the world are already experiencing the catastrophic effects of the climate crisis. Global warming must be kept to 1.0 to ensure safety as well as justice for the most vulnerable communities who are already bearing the brunt of climate breakdown. The possibility of returning below 1.5C in an overshoot scenario will quickly move out of reach if sluggish global action on GHG reductions continues, which we all well know that it is. Jim, comments?
Well, the planet last year, 2023, worldwide, exceeded 1.5 on 86 days.
Yeah, sure did.
So, you know, first of all, they use the word mitigate, which means not stopping, not preventing. So, so right there. Yeah, there's this other thing called ocean heat content. You know, Remember, what we are experiencing now is the level of CO2 equivalent from 15, 20 years ago. Is a lag effect. Throw in thermal inertia, you're not going to mitigate or stop this or whatever. You're not.
Well, not this way. I mean, look, they're the money people. They go to the IPCC. They try to get the funding from the governments. And like I always say, Jim, we are we may not like these things, but we are basically just travelers on the road of learning. And as these things unfold, I'm bringing it because I know we cannot fight the techno optimists. We can't fight it. So we're going to learn about it. We're going to learn as much as we can about it. So they will say reduce rapid reduction of emissions, which I agree with, remove development, research, and scaling of techniques to remove the GHGs from the atmosphere, repair, finding solutions that can help repair parts of our damaged climate systems, and the resilience, strengthening our capacity to deal with it. Well, I agree with that. We need worldwide. It's not just strengthening our capacity, Jim, as you know. It's getting people to even believe the science behind it, even though with their own eyes and bodies and where they live, they are experiencing the effects of abrupt climate change all the time. I mean, for example, in the United States, Iowa's holding its caucus tomorrow, and it's going to be the coldest it has been maybe ever. At least since there was one cold snap in 1949. These people have to go out and vote, and and they're not. Is it going to even come to their minds that, oh, gee, this is, it's an anomaly? Maybe climate crisis is real because
No,
it's a
what they'll say is it's cold, but the global warming's bullshit. That's what
yeah.
they'll do.
That's what they'll do. That's what they'll do. But anyway, so this group, with all of its people, it's their independent group of experts, reflect a wide range of academic disciplines and they threw that one in, indigenous knowledge comprising 16 experts from 10 nations. So, all right. So actually, I've had enough of this, but we do have a video. And Jim and I, what we're going to do with this particular video that we have, we're going to watch this video, and then we are going to comment on it. We're going to stop it and make comments on it. So I'm going to set it up here, and we're going to watch this video. And Jim, you just tell me when we stop and we comment on it.
There will be no ice in the Arctic Ocean by the 2030s unless we freeze it ourselves. Can we do that? Let's find out. Can you see the danger coming towards us? The planet Earth is having a melting breakdown. As days pass, our planet gets warmer and polar ice caps melt like ice cream. According to recent studies, the Arctic has warmed 3 times faster than the global average due to global climate change caused by human activities. Scientists say that the Laptev Sea, which forms the main glaciers in the Arctic, always freezes in October every year, but for the first time in 2020, it didn't freeze. This makes global warming even more frightening. The thickest layers of ice on the Arctic Ocean have been getting smaller and smaller over the last 30 years. Soon, there will be no ice in the Arctic Ocean. And no ice means no life. That's why we need to freeze the Arctic. If we can regrow forests by planting trees to reduce carbon dioxide, can we also refreeze the Arctic to prevent global warming?
All right. So, can we refreeze it? We're going to find out from the engineers. But do you think
Well,
it's even a
first,
possibility?
a couple of things. The Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the rest of the planet, maybe in some places 5 times faster. Also, he used the word glacier. That's not accurate. Glaciers are land derived. coming off land sheets, land ice sheets.
Right.
Uh, there's none of that in the lab test. It's basically sea ice. Now, sea ice can raft and form ridges and stuff like that, but it's not glaciers. It's sea ice.
All right.
This is Engineering Wonders, and let's explore if we can refreeze the Arctic Ocean. Do you think freezing the ocean is impossible? Well, think again, because some scientists say otherwise. Stephen Desch, a physicist from Arizona State University in the United States, says it is not enough to stop using fossil fuels to end the ice disappearing from the Arctic Ocean. We need to do a lot more than that. A lot more, like freezing the Arctic ourselves. According to him and many other scientists, it is possible to thicken the ice in the Arctic Ocean to prevent the doomed future from happening.
All right. One thing I want to say. These are not flying planes over and doing stratosphere, aerosol injections. This is completely different. So that's at least something that's a little more positive.
But how? There are two approaches to the matter. We can try to preserve the remaining ice in the Arctic and look for ways to make it thicker, or we can try to accomplish the thing that we see as nearly impossible, which is creating new ice blocks in the Arctic. Think about making the North Pole full of ice again. Isn't that amazing? Some scientists focus more on protecting the existing ice than on creating it, like covering the Arctic ice with tiny sparkling silica microspheres to help it reflect more sunlight. And
Okay, who's heard of that one out there? That was an interesting one. I mean, the with the little microspheres, where are they going to go, Jim?
Yeah,
Um,
what, are they going to sprinkle it on the existing ice or on the
yeah.
actual surface of the water
No, on the
itself?
existing ice. And what is it made out of and where is it going to go? But let's watch. Let's
I mean,
watch.
silica is good for diatoms, but come on, that's you're going to form a salacious ooze, which is not going to be good for the environment.
Yeah. I don't know.
block the sun's rays by creating more clouds during the polar summer. In the marine cloud brightening technique
Which we talked
developed by
about.
British physicist John Lanham, particles like salt and seawater are injected into clouds to make them reflect more sunlight.
Now, I know that Paul Beckwith has talked about this in the past, and maybe this is not as toxic.
Lanham collaborated with Stephen Salter, professor of engineering design at the University of Edinburgh, to design a floating spray ship that sprays seawater at clouds through its mast. Also, a non-profit organization named Ice 911 has developed a highly reflecting sand-like substance to shield ice from sunlight. The crew tested this sand-like artificial substance on a 15,000 square meter portion of a frozen lake in Alaska. They observed that treated ice was thicker and more reflective than untreated ice. While there are many other studies to preserve the remaining ice, some scientists and engineers focus on how to create new ice sheets in the Arctic. A 29-year-old engineer, Ferris Rajak Kodahatuhaha, and his team designed a submarine that can produce 16-foot thick, 82-foot wide hexagonal icebergs. The submarine would form the iceberg by filling its central cavity with seawater and filtering out the salt to boost the freezing point of the water by more than 3 degrees Fahrenheit, while shielding the chamber with a hatch to protect it from the sun. And a month later, it ejects the iceberg.
How
The
many
submarines will be large enough to contain social and research facilities. The hexagonal-shaped icebergs, or ice babies according to Kodahatuhaha, can be connected and form gigantic ice caps, according to the team responsible for the project. However, the fact that ice does not considerably change the water level is a potential flaw with this and related techniques. It doesn't help the problem of flooding, which global warming triggers because there is no change in the total mass of the sea. If the ice is floating on the water from which it is formed, icebergs must survive in order to lower sea levels. Stephen Desch says thicker ice would mean longer lasting ice.
All right, so where are you, Jim, with this?
Well, they're thrown around terms very loosely. They're saying sea ice, land ice. Okay, what is it? First of all, when the oceans freeze, okay, you get the ice melts. There is no change in sea level when the ocean
Mm-hmm.
itself freezes. So they're talking about preserving what? Sea ice, land ice, and that it will change, the ocean levels. Well, land ice melts, yeah, ocean levels go up, but that's a different source. They're talking about freezing the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not going to be any change in sea ice. So I don't know what the hell they're getting at here. Al- Also, uh, spraying salt and whatever. Okay, fine, yeah, because salt. The thinking is that when you form a droplet that eventually leads to a cloud formation, you need some sort of what's called a hygroscopic particle, which is something for the water molecules to coalesce around. And that could
Okay.
be a piece of soot, it could be salt, what have you. So that's the idea behind that. You you have enough cloud cover. Okay, you reduce the sun energy reaching the ocean, increase the albedo on top of the clouds, and you can kind of cool things down. What's the atmospheric flow patterns like? They can move the clouds away. And how much are you going to be spraying up in there? Are you going to actually take oceanic water and then do what? Extract the salt out of it and spray that salt into the air?
Mm.
Then what do you do with the remaining water? Throw it back in the Arctic Ocean? Well, now you're going to mess up the salinity.
Yeah, there you go. And they don't even think about what's living in the ocean.
Right. I mean, you have organisms that are, some of them are stenohaline. They can only tolerate a narrow band of salinity range. So this is, when you hear a lot of these geoengineering schemes, you hear such what I call active processes. You always have to do something, inject something, throw this in, that kind of stuff. Where with mirrors, the mirrors is more of a passive system.
Yeah,
Just set up a bunch of mirrors and sit back.
yeah. That's what Dr. Tao is studying. He was in Sri Lanka and that was the last time he's supposed to be a guest with me. And actually, if Jim, he would probably be great with both of us. He's working. They're working pretty steady on this. And again, Mears doesn't seem like it would be a horribly interfering project. Of course, there's always the mirrors, the glass. We'd have to ask about that when he comes on the show. All right.
That would mean the danger of all sea ice disappearing from the Arctic in summer would be reduced significantly. This means that we need to find a way to prevent the ice from melting. We should plan a solution to keep the iceberg of the same weight and height. Professor of Earth Observation at the University of Leeds, Andrew Shepard, praised the idea as an interesting engineering approach, but also questioned its scalability. He stated that nearly 10 million submarines are required to produce the amount of ice that has melted over the last half-century. If we put this figure in context, we can conclude that it is close to the number of all Ford Model Ts ever produced, he added, implying that the required quantity is far too high. Stopping or at least reducing the dramatic loss of Arctic sea ice is more essential than the rising water levels. Snow and ice reflect a lot more light than the sea or the oceans.
Okay. I see you wanting to make a comment on that one, Jim.
Well,
You're
well,
chomping at the
well,
bit.
first of first of all, Shepard is correct in his skepticism. So,
Okay.
so good on him for that. They keep throwing this thing about sea levels rising. If you're melting sea ice, there is no change in sea level. I wish they get that right there just makes the whole video, I think, invalid. But the other thing that they're not addressing is that, okay, you make all this ice, you still have a shitload of ocean heat ready to diffuse from below and melt it right away.
Hmm. So the sea ice melting is not actually what makes sea level rise happen.
No,
No.
it's no, it's land,
Right.
Greenland, Antarctica,
Right.
Alpine.
All of that.
That's what raises sea level.
Mhm. All right. Let's
As a result, a bigger frozen surface sends more radiation back into space.
so we know this.
These are all brilliant ideas to reduce the cost of global warming. But what will be the financial cost if we bring those ideas to life? Would that be worth it? The Arctic is a huge body of water with an area of approximately 5,430,000 square miles. That makes the estimated cost of refreezing the ice sheets in the Arctic to be over $500 billion.
No.
That's a mind-blowing amount of money to invest. However, the polar ice caps need our urgent rescue. If we don't pay the financial cost now, we will pay a much more horrible price by the late 2030s. Stay tuned for the next episode of Engineering.
Well, Jim, at least, hang on. At least they're not saying 2100 anymore. Did you notice? It's kind of changed a little bit. Now it's the 2030s. Oh my gosh. So what's your overall critique here?
It's it's a pile of nonsense. It just is. I mean, how much of that silica crap you're gonna have to manufacture first of all,
Yeah.
and how many of those damn submarine thingies you're gonna, it's like, come
Yeah, I
on.
know in the beginning.
I mean, as I said, okay, so you extract the salt out, so you basically increase, you raise the freezing temperature. Okay, fine, but that means what? You now have created basically hypersaline. So we have first inject salt into the atmosphere to create cloud, but then we have remove salt to freeze the water. So what are you guys gonna do? I mean, one is going to create a hyposaline situation. The other is going to create a hypersaline situation. The organism might have something to say about that. I
Yeah,
mean,
there you go. The
I mean,
organism.
it's
Mm.
just, so which is it, guys? I mean, but to what people don't understand is to affect the kind of changes that they're hoping to. The scale has to be enormous, and the resources are just not there to even implement it at 1/100th of the required scale. And again, I go back to the unintended parameters, unintended, unpredictable parameters, unforeseen
Mhm.
interactions, unintended consequences. There's always something that comes along and just bites you in the ass and say, "Oops, sorry, ain't gonna happen." So
Or
it's
oops,
just,
we made a mistake and it is a catastrophic mistake.
I mean, let's put it this way: for 283 years, we've been doing one hell of a big
Yeah.
geoengineering experiment.
Yeah, we sure
Do
have.
you really think we're going to overturn 283 years in 10 years?
No. I
For
hate
those,
to be so negative, but it just all seems kind of ludicrous, but yet they're going to raise their money. But of course, Jim, if they were bombs, there would be plenty of funding for all of that. God.
it's just, you're not going to
Oh.
reverse 280 plus years within 10 years. There's a thing called, I don't know, physics, thermal inertia. It's just not going to happen. I mean, so, for those who keep pushing this stuff, they must be getting really well funded, or they're just smoking some really interesting foliage that they ought to share with the rest of us.
Yeah, really. Well, we're going to go to questions, guys. I'm glad that this worked out, well, that Jim could make it, and I'm thrilled. So well, I am, Jim, because I couldn't have done
I
this
have no
without you.
control over that.
I know, but I couldn't have done this quite without you. You're my team, babe. All right. So in the beginning, Valdi, hi Valdi, we're to pass self reinforcing feedback loop from loss of reflective ice snow and the more dark water exposed, we get acceleration of warming, which is leading to less refreezing, yet more melting and warming, and so on, of course. And that's why these are all being looked at because this is happening. Thank you, Valdi. We know Valdi from Facebook. So thanks for being the one person watching on Facebook. Even though I multi-stream to Twitter and Facebook and Twitch, and you know, this week wasn't my week to try to multitask, but I did it. Hi, Tommyist, Environmental Coffee House. Can you ask Jim, where did Nordhaus go wrong in his climate change effects projections? Why is climate change more than just a minor problem facing humans and the biosphere? All right. I'm going to keep it up. I'm just trying to get it to a where everybody can see it. Okay, so where did Nordhaus go wrong? It's two questions, and you can answer that first.
Not being in his head, I can't really say. Perhaps an underappreciation for uh, exponentiation.
Maybe, maybe. And then Tommyist, our buddy from Discord, join our Discord. Obsolete Optics is the big manager there. Uh, and then the other one was, why is climate change more than just a minor problem facing humans and the biosphere?
Well, we're just changing the we're just changing everything to unlivable conditions. I mean, when you start having precipitation bombs, excessive flooding, heat waves, drought, impacts crops, it impacts waterways, brine infiltration into water tables. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on,
Mm.
and it's just making life untenable, to be quite blunt, for humans, and for many, many
Everywhere.
other species, because things are changing far too quickly for organisms to adapt.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's put this one up. When idiot savants do climate economics, how an elite clique of math addled economists hijack climate policy by Christopher Ketchum. All right, we'll have to put that or try to find that and put that in because I haven't read that. So I'll put that in. I'll try to look for it, put it in the show notes. And Kristen Darlin, Environmental Coffee House question. My concerns about wind speeds going forward. That's an interesting one. Wind speeds. Wind
Can you
speeds
be
out of the Arctic, I would say, is the Arctic amplification, and that this is how I'm going to interpret it. Let's see, the oscillation, the amplification, all of the things that are happening on steroids. Will that affect wind speeds throughout the country? Because we just had, maybe because she's seeing we've just had windstorms all over that we're not used to. Is it going to happen through the jet stream? Am I right, Kristen? Am I getting close or am I hot? Any ideas, Jim?
well, it's weather is different from climate.
Yes.
So we're having weather now, but remember, climate is weather averaged over a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, right now it might be snotty winds conditions, but overall, the
Right.
jet stream is kind of meandering, kind of
It is.
slowing down. It doesn't say that it's always going to be slow. There are going to be times when it gets It picks up because perhaps the gradient conditions are just right. The differences in temperature and pressure are just right for that particular moment, in that particular time, in that particular place for, wind speeds to kick up a few notches.
Mm-hmm.
So it do not, you have to separate weather from climate. You
Always.
just have to.
That's okay. I'm glad she asked the question. All right. Let's see. I've got they were talking borosilicate is glass. So is that one of the things that are going to be used in the project? Thank you. Thank you, Obsolete Optics. All right. Countries are actually stockpiling strategic sand reserves. Sound funny, but it's true. Have you heard anything like that, Jim?
Well, actually, in my video where I discussed the 10 reasons why civilization is going to collapse soon,
Yeah.
one of the
Oh
one of the
boy.
dwindling resources is sand.
Yeah. True.
Finding the right sand. So yeah, I see countries doing that.
Okay. Yeah, the sand is used for fracking, and that's another issue that could be, uh, facilitating this. All right. Um. Okay. This is just attempting to solve complex problems created through the use of complex technology by using more complex technology is effectively akin to sawing off the branch upon what we sit. Mic drop. And oh, I wish I had a mic drop sound, and I'll have to get what I can only say. All right, the meow. But that is actually, what is that? Jevons paradox in energy. You just keep using it, it's going to be more and more and more.
Yeah, I mean, or that as things become more, has become less expensive, people say, "Oh, huh, I can use more of the stuff." It's just,
Yeah. Well, there's the ice breaking. I found one. I'm so not set up. Okay, obsolete optics. And Scott says, yeah, he doesn't believe how many people are falling for the alien BS. Oh, I don't know where that was. You must have had conversations in the chat we didn't see. This time, okay. Oh, yes. And time after time leads to overwhelming the ecosystem and precipitous collapse. So, by fixing it, maybe we're going to lead to a quicker collapse if they think they're doing all these things, Jim, to fix.
um, not sure I understand, where the exact point of that. Can you put that comment back up there?
I can't find it. I clicked it off. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. All right, listen,
I
I'm really
mean,
sorry.
we're going to have a precipitous collapse no matter what because of all the shit we're doing to the planet, and plus the fact there's just too many bloody people on the planet.
Well, yeah, we need to be collapse aware and we need to do post doom, no gloom. I tried this week. Post doom, no gloom. Yep. Okay. Maybe this was what it was pseudoscientific dismissal or unwarranted doubt that contradicts the scientific consensus on climate change. Oh, he was talking to evil Yoda. All right, here's a good one. Does Jim agree with Michael Mann regarding the claim that further warming would stop within a few years if we get GHG emissions to zero now?
No,
The jury is so out on that one. It really is. You don't, and why?
ocean heat content, thermal
Ah,
inertia,
that's what you
lag
say.
effects. You know, people keep forgetting that there is an accumulated in excess of 460 zetajoules of heat energy sitting in the ocean. And
Right.
and as the oceans stratify, that's going to diffuse to the atmosphere.
Okay.
And you can't, that's thermodynamics tells us this is going to happen. So we can go to zero emissions this very second, and it's not going to do a hill of beans. You're still going to have, like pipeline warming. You're still going to have a guaranteed warming that will continue.
Okay. Astrologer climate witness. All these schemes do not take into account that CO2 from industrial civilization will continue to spew from population growth and new business, like, Shark Tank. No slowdown in emissions. I don't see it either, sweetheart. You know that. I don't see
Yeah,
it. It's
I
not
I,
happening. And we're going to drill
I
the
agree.
Arctic.
I agree. I mean, to create, the technologies, what have you, the so-called green technologies, you still have to send heavy equipment out to the land
Yep.
to ruin the landscape.
Yeah.
And these heavy equipment use diesel, so then they're going to burn diesel to mine the stuff. And then, I keep going back to, you need to construct not only a heat budget, but a CO2 budget, and to actually do a as fair as an assessment as possible. But yes, I mean, you're still gonna have energy requirements for people, and you're still gonna be drilling away to get the resources. And on a finite planet, that ain't sustainable.
No. Jim, didn't you say earlier we are experience the heat that from CO2 emissions 15 to 20 years ago? Oh yeah.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
lot of
we are.
scientists say that.
Is a
Yes.
lag effect, so that if you want to know what the current level of CO2 equivalents will be like, wait 15, 20 years for it to
Right.
manifest itself. So what we are experiencing today is a reflectance of the CO2 equivalence level from 15, 20 years ago.
Okay. Let's see. Stephen K. Once a break in that glacier happens, the water seeps into it, warms as it cycles through it like a circulatory system. It's eroding the ice and breaking off into the ocean. Then it becomes sea ice. Mm, that's interesting, right?
No, no, but sea ice is ice that's derived from oceanic waters.
So
What
there's
that be-
nothing in a
so
glacier
what
when it
that
breaks?
so what that happens is when the glacier breaks off and enters the sea, it's called an iceberg.
Yeah, okay. All
So,
right, so
but
that's different
but
than sea ice.
to be clear, okay, we have to be specific here. Sea ice is ice derived from freezing the oceanic waters. It requires the process of brine rejection, which means a freezing point depression, which means you need to lower the temperature in order to eject the brine to form the ice. So,
Okay.
and there's a process. You get what's called, grease ice, frazzle ice, pancake ice. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole sequence of steps to create the sea ice, but sea ice specifically means oceanic water freezing.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Stephen, I hope you're happy with that, and I hope you're still here. Kevin Hester, our darling Kevin. Question for Jim. Do you think the Mercator's projection fools people about the real size of the Arctic? The
Oh, the Mercator
Mercator.
projection,
The
the,
Mercator.
the
Okay.
Mercator
I,
projection.
I, I used
Uh,
the New York Bronx part. The Mercator. I sounded like I was from the Bronx, Kevin. Yes.
well, according to the Mercator projection, Greenland is this huge thing, bigger than North America. So yeah, so that's an interesting thing to bring up because the video talks about, the Arctic Ocean is this huge place. No, it's not. It's actually kind of a small body of water. In fact, during the ice ages, you have all those shelf systems on the Eurasian side exposed. The Arctic Ocean is kind of a big pond, you know,
A big
and
pond. The
I
big
mean,
pond.
it's like the size of the Mediterranean. During the
Oh,
ice ages,
yeah.
it's really not that big of a body of water, but it is an important body of water because of what it does to the rest of the planet as far as in terms of climate. Well, that was the other interesting thing in that video. It's talking
Yeah.
about, well, we froze this Alaska lake. Yeah, how big was that lake?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
the lake doesn't have the physical processes necessarily that you have in the oceans, waves and, extensive mixing and advection, horizontal and vertical advection. So the lakes tend, especially in polar lakes, they tend to be not as physically dynamic. And I'll just leave it
Right.
at that.
Okay. And let's see. Oh, let's just nuke the Arctic and turn it into glass permanently. Problem solved. Thanks. Oh God. We've definitely have a humorous crowd, and I love obsolete optics.
Well, it's funny you should say nuking the Arctic. Years and years ago, here in Alaska, there were a bunch of s- politicians who wanted to basically nuke the Yukon River
What?
and then put a dam on it, for hydroelectric, whatever, so on and so forth. They
Nuking
wanted
it?
they wanted to nuke this. Seriously,
Lovely.
there's a book called The Firecracker Boys by Dan O'Neill. Read it. It will blow your mind, the crazy shit these guys were coming up with.
Oh God.
Yeah,
Wow,
it's
wow,
seriously,
wow.
it's called The Firecracker Boys by Dan O'Neill.
Right. That's cool. You'll have to send me the link and I can put it in. All right, we have a few more. No super chats, so I'm not going to say thank you to anybody, but I'm saying thank you to you guys for being here. And I think we had one earlier, but it didn't show up here. And it was Tennessee Jed because he I couldn't stay with us. So thank you, Kevin, for your question. And all right, Steven says, not a population problem. What we have is a pollution problem. You might argue that more people equals more pollution. That's only part of the reality. Concentrations of people are the problem. That I did a whole show on that, on population and resources and all. So that's actually a very interesting comment. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you,
Well,
Stephen. Go ahead.
overpopulation is the problem because there's finite surface
Mm-hmm.
area. You need land to develop food and house people. As you
Mm-hmm.
put more and more
Mm-hmm.
people on the planet, where you're going to house them, and then two, if you're going to create housing uh, units, that means you are detracting land that can be used to develop food. So you're not going to meet the all the nutritional requirements of the people, and for those people who derive their protein from the ocean, well, the oceans are dying, so you're not going to be able to meet their needs there. So overpopulation is the problem, whether it's sparsely or densely packed, too many people on the planet. Remember, population biologists basically put the carrying capacity between 100 to 600 million people. We're
Right.
at 8 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Not sustainable. You are outstripping the resources faster than they can be replenished for those resources that can be replenished.
Right.
Other resources can't be replenished. So, there are and too many people really is the core crux of the whole damn problem that the world is facing.
Well, that it is. Shh, we're not allowed to talk about population overshoot. Oh, yes, we are. But I like to also say that those people that would say, okay, they're talking about overpopulation and they're just eugenicists and they want to kill people. No, we want to empower societies to understand the problem. We want it's really about an empowerment of women, really. And the problem is that more and more of uh, the right wing all over the United States and all over uh, the world want to disempower women,
Yep.
unfortunately. And they're the key to making this change. Women understanding and not being pressured to have multiple children, like all in these all religious sects where they have 7 to 10 children. Unsustainable as well, as well. Oh, I got a super chat.
Spot on, Sandy.
Nadia,
That's
Nadia, thank you.
spot on, Sandy. He said that was spot on. Just wanted to get
Oh,
that out
thank you,
there.
thank you. Uh, I think Soviets actually did use nuclear bomb for some sorts of mining or other sorts of projects, but stopped using them for for nuclear reasons, risk of radiation didn't seem to be mentioned. Nadia is in our Discord. She is just a wealth of information. So join our Discord because you too can have quite a heavy duty conversation. Hi, Benny Loco. She's lurking and working. Thank you, sweetheart. Isn't that lovely? Thank you. Everybody, you know it goes to this channel. It's not cheap. It's not. Thank you. Global Environmental Coffee House is a clearinghouse for all things under the environmental umbrella, which is true, and there's a lot. And we talk about mostly all of them. So let's see, a couple more comments, and then I think we're going to hit the road. El Nino question. I knew somebody would bring up El Nino. The El Nino after this one is going to be amazing. We'll have to bring Nicholas back on, right, to talk about the El Nino.
Yeah, it's going to be a doozy. In fact, I'm actually I just found a paper today looking at marine heat waves in the Eastern Pacific
Yeah.
and the impacts of El Nino or the ENSO cycles on
Right.
that. So I'll probably be doing a deep dive on that for one of these days.
Good.
But
Good. I'll share it. I'll share it. Yeah. You are my team, baby. I love you, Jim. He knows that. Why don't we consider massive slowdown in GHG emissions by changing our economic systems? You would think. Well, you know what I think? That's going to happen. And it's going to be the young progressives. Matt on left past 10, Matt from the letter hack had said, whatever happens, if Biden's reelected, it's going to have to be a mobilization of progressives to stop fighting and really, really get out there and work to make the changes, because that politically is the only way anything's going to change, and somehow figure out how to do in the schools, get a way to teach children how to decipher between what is fake and what's real. Inoculation theory. That's the inoculation theory I've talked about many times.
well, the problem is that, yes, we need to change the economic system because capitalism is an exploitive system. It exploits people, it exploits resources. It's predicated on two very faulty assumptions. One is that growth is all that matters and resources are infinite. Well, we know resources are not infinite, and we know that continual growth, well, in an organism, we call that cancer. So
Yeah, there you
so
go.
because continual growth is not good. What we
Mm-hmm.
need is to have a system based on sustainability, but that does require, as the person commented, a completely different economic system. And the capitalists and the oligarchs and the billionaires, they're not going to, on their own volition, switch over. They're grabbing as much as they can now because they see the collapse coming.
Mm-hmm.
So, in order for us to change our economic system, it's going to be forced upon us, assuming we're still around.
That's a big assumption. That's a big assumption. Yeah, and then we got the orange Nazi lurking. This nation appears unable to be rid of. Yeah, I was wondering, and I don't know if I'll get in trouble for saying it, but why didn't the bolts fall out of his? That's all I'm going to say. Bolts. Trump Force One. Is that too much to hope? There's hopium for you guys.
Yeah, that was Alaska Airline too. Yeehaw!
Oh shit, Jim. Yeah, but it's not necessarily the airline's fault. We definitely know that we're learning more and more.
Well,
But
yeah,
all right.
United found a whole bunch of loose bolts.
Yeah, I flew on one of those planes, unfortunately, when I had to go visit my mom in Florida, because no one can stay put. No one can stay where their families are anymore. No one. And it's pathetic. And I'm sick of it. And I'm not leaving here. And I'm glad my kid is only 80 miles an hour away. It's just so sad. How can we encourage other nations to limit their population too? Rabbit and coyote population dynamics. Is that the classic X in ecology classes still? Eh, it's in the um, it's really in the culture, you know, and a lot of cultures will say, and medical medical is still not sophisticated in a lot of countries like it is in the United States, hence women having more children to compensate for children that don't make it. So it is such a complex issue.
Well, the thing is that in a lot of the Western nations, like go across Europe, Scandinavia, there is actually a decline in birth rates. And there are concerns that soon you have the older folks outnumbering, when you look at the demographics, that the older folks will outnumber the, the younger folks, those who are of working age. Um, Russia's another one that's having demographic issues, a declining birth rate, in fact, a very low birth rates. Um, China, as a result of their one-child policy for decades, is now facing issues. The problem is the global South; their birth rates are up, and it's probably due to, you know, women not being empowered,
No,
lack of
not at
education,
all.
and you know, other societal factors.
My gosh. It is a spooky time. It is a spooky time. Steven, you're cute. I've been waiting for the doom from doomers for more than a decade. Well, honey, I've been here for 7 years. It's almost a decade. All right, listen, we have gone over an hour. We're an hour and 45 minutes, but we still have 88 people that are watching us, which is great. I want to say thank you, Jim. Thank you, everyone. I hope that you got your questions answered. And we absolutely are going to do a follow up, I think, right, Jim? We're going to do a follow up and get into mirrors a little heavier. And I'm going to hopefully we get Dr. Yi Tao on here. I have other people I'm working with. And by the way, guys, I will be doing that show on energy. Jim, I had a question in my community chat about different kinds of energy, wood stove, propane, different kinds of things. And I have a guest I am interviewing this week who is an expert at this. I'm not telling you yet who it is, but you'll like it. And you'll learn because energy is a huge thing. And even if we are going down the mountain, we are still here and we still got to warm our homes and we still have to live, right?
Yep.
Still here? All right.
Yep.
All right. So, everybody, thank you so much. I will be here on Tuesday night. And I'm not exactly sure everything I'm doing yet. I don't know if the interview will be ready by then, but rest assured, we will have a fantastic show. So, don't worry about that. Thank you, Jim. Love to everybody. Love to all of you. Love, love, big love.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a good night.